you look like you're in you look like you're in craft work, frankly.
Oh, no, that's just the Australian texture. We all look like.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, God. I haven't gotten to do one of these video interviews for a while. I just got back into the radio game, so it's a pleasure to talk to
Hmm. Oh, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, I've got my radio face on.
you. Can I start by asking you where in the band's history does Flood come in?
You know, it's kind of like the first chapter of the middle. You know, we were a local band in New York for almost almost 10 years. I guess we were like puttering around for like 8 years in New York City, which is a really long time for a band to kind of. I mean, we made a couple of indie records in the late 80s that did incredibly well sales wise, and that was really the thing that woke the major labels up to. It was a very different time. I mean, major labels really ruled the world, and so we what kind of we sort of escaped New York City's gravitational pull in like 88, 89, and then we got signed and put out Flood in 90, and then we started touring internationally after that.
Yeah, wow. And it's such a unique album. I think like sonically, um, I don't know where it came from. Who were your influences at the time for it? Or was
Well,
it trying to
it was a
escape? Yeah.
well, it was a very, very singular time in music because there was actually a lot of things being invented at that moment that had never been available before. Like the entire history of our band kind of tracks to the history of drum machines and samplers and all that kind of prosumer electronic stuff. I mean, we really spent years of our lives in a MIDI cave. You know, we were like programming drums and thinking about what drummers do. What meanwhile, like not really ever talking to drummers or interacting with drummers. I mean, we would see do shows and I think the drummers uniformly hated us because we were just so it. A drum machine to most people just seems so anti live music, but it was a way for us to do our thing and not sort of be relying on any sort of level of success. We really took a very organic road out of New York City.
So what does a drum machine add to your sound that a conventional drummer can't get?
Well, I mean, we don't use drum machine now. We have an eight-piece band. Our band is like super organic and very much there's like actual improvisation and jamming and all sorts of classic live band stuff happening. But the one thing that was interesting is that you could have set out to arrange a song in the most stock way you could imagine. Like you could just be like, okay, I'm going to approach this drum part like it's Ringo Starr, but the sounds are so different. It doesn't no matter how straight you did it, it would sound completely bionic because the machines had the total kind of qualities of 1990s drum machines or 80s drum machines really. So and things evolved. I mean, we actually delayed recording our second album because we heard there was a really good drum machine coming out. There's this guy Chris uh, um, was the guy from the Waitresses. Uh, Chris from the Waitresses. He's the guy who wrote "I Know What Boys Like" and "Christmas Wrapping."
Ah,
He's
yeah.
a really super Chris Butler, super talented guy, and he lent us his first drum machine, which was like a DMX, which was like the drum machine that is on the Run DMC Kings of Rock album, and that just the snare sound has is almost unrelated to a real snare sound. It's just like so there were some rough tools, but it was interesting to work that way.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be on the vanguard of sound whenever you're playing around with the latest instruments and toys that are coming out. I feel that bands that
Yeah.
are engaging with that, they're always the ones doing cool shit.
Well, it was a very, it was very of its time. I mean, there were a lot of English bands who really, when you heard their albums, you just thought, oh wow, they just went out and bought themselves, a $200,000 synthesizer to make this record.
Yeah. Are there pieces of equipment that are doing that to you now that are influencing your sound?
Well, there are a couple of things that are, interesting. I mean, a lot of times it's more like studio stuff. It's like more textural and not really foundational or such a fundamental thing as like working with a drum machine. But there is there is this emerging technology right now that it's really hard to describe. And I know I'm on the radio, so I don't want people to fall asleep and crash their cars while they're listening to the sound of my voice. But it does this thing. It's very similar to like auto looping, but what it does is it basically just takes it can sense transitive moments in a song and just automatically kind of dice them up, um, and then it puts them on sort of an array across the keyboard, and you can play the keyboard, and it's like you it's really hard to describe, but the sound is supernaturally strange because it's just
Mm.
dozens of fragments of a sampled piece of music or a sampled sound just cut up into these rhythmic slices. And it's this is something that's just available. It's like literally free online. Like if you own the sampling device, you just download this little app, and all of a sudden it's not synthesis, it's not sampling, it's not looping. I don't even know what you'd call it, but it is a very interesting. I'm trying to figure out how to put a song together that's actually as interesting to listen to as it is to make. I mean, it's one of those things where it is like uh, it is like candy for somebody who's interested in recording techniques.
Yeah, bizarrely, I've got a Machine Mark III outside, and
Mm.
playing with samples in that way, it just opens up your brain to a whole new world. And if you can get them sounding natural, like nailing those transients is such a difficult thing, but eliminating that, you've got a whole new world.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when we work with electronic stuff, we're not really trying to fool anybody most of the time. I mean, I would be really surprised if people would be fooled, but then again, what sounds natural to one person is supernatural to somebody else.
Yeah. At the radio station over in St. Peter's, there's a sign on the fridge, a sticker that's been there for years that just says drum machines have no soul. And whenever I see
Oh
that,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, this. There's a great song. Uh, what's the name of the band? It's like I think they're called the Teddy Bears. They were like a DJ band, um, and they did a song uh, where the refrain was "Drum machines ain't got no soul," and it's like it's complete dance floor, like crowd filler. Like it's really really a exciting song. Um, I think Eve might rap on it. It's what is it called? Um, but yeah, it's the hook line of the song is that those drum machines ain't got no soul. And uh, you know, who not everything has to be. There's not just one aesthetic in the world. Drum machines have essentially taken over. I mean, look at the charts. It's like everything's drum machines.
And not everything has to have soul.
Well, soul's nice, but I think it's even that's kind of I don't know. It seems a little arbitrary. I mean, it's like yeah, it's just people have been trying. Musicians have been nervous about trying to perfect their music for a very long time.
Yeah. And does that definitely come across for you as a very prolific songwriter with your partner John, of course?
Well, I mean, because we work with machines, and have a history of working with machines, we are used to certain things. Like I was very glad that even when we first started the band, I couldn't sing and play at the same time. So it was like it was a real earn as you learn experience for me. But one thing about working with machines is like it really improves your time as a musician. Like yeah, I'm very comfortable working with a click track, And it's always interesting when you work with a musician who doesn't like working with a click track because it's sort of like they've kind of ignored a certain uh, uh, it's not in a way having a click track can be a crutch. I've actually heard this interesting thing that I was unaware of, that if a lot of contemporary touring acts, like if you're in an act that came up in an working with in-ear monitors and working with cue, like a lot of times people are playing with samplers that are playing other bits of the track in the live show, so they're like really dialed in terms of just like working with a hybrid of organic music, organic instruments, and electronic supplements. And evidently, a lot of times, drummers are actually feeding the people on the stage a click track live, which I've never, I've played with a click track live. I've played with a drummer playing to a click track live, but I've never played to an actual, or very rarely, I played with an audible click in my in ears, and
That's
it does seem like very much, talk about taking the vibe out. That would be very distracting for me, but it's quite common, evidently. You learn something every day.
people seem to go for like they want to be so polished, dead on time, but then you lose that sense of, I don't know, is it a sense of play when you can speed up and slow down as a band?
It really depends on the song. I mean, we really try to have it every way we can live. There are things that really do tighten up. One thing that happens with certain songs, like one of the very earliest songs we ever recorded was this track called "Don't Let's Start." That's got a really incessant kind of. It's like dun, 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 dun. And it's sort of an invitation to rush. And I don't mean the band. It's like we sometimes really get ahead of ourselves, and that actually, since we're on the topic, that was one of the songs where we had Marty, our drummer, who's been with us for over 20 years now, and I still consider him the new guy. He plays to a click on that, and that really helps focus us up, because without it, it just sounds sort of like we're just falling down the stairs. We're so excited to get to the next part.
Rhythmically falling downstairs.
Yes, yes, yes. We're rushing.
Mm. So a huge part of your performances and your fan base, what they love about you are the live shows. Is it
Hmm.
just, it's not about the song for you, it's about the performance. Who do you take influence for when you're on stage?
Oh, I think some of the stuff we do on stage is very much it's a very direct reflection of our personalities. Like um, there is kind of John and I have a stage banter on stage that really started when we were a duo, and I think it came out of our nervousness, and I think it was a way to kind of bring some extra value and extra interest to and extra spontaneity to the thing we were doing live, and we would just sort of indulge ourselves a little bit in the storytelling part of things, like whatever happened in our day. And um, the way it goes back and forth between us is often pretty funny. And when we got a live band, which was right around when we started the tour after the Flood tour, we started working with a drummer and a bass player, and then it's expanded from there. But when we got a live band, we really stopped with the yip yap, and a lot of people were really, that was actually the sort of a strange turn for us, because for a lot of people, like that was the funnest part, was just hearing us, kind of blab and just say weird stuff. Um, and But as we've gotten more relaxed and as we've worked with the same guys for all these years, it's kind of crept back into the show. Putting together an exciting show for yourself is almost as big a challenge as it is for putting something together for the audience. I mean, we're always thinking about the front row and the back row and thinking about like how different songs work and where they work best in the show. And but there's also this thing of like, when you've been there's certain songs that we've had that have been in our repertoire for like 25 years. It is it is you know you do have to think about how to kind of keep it alive. And but we have a really big. I'm happy to report that we have a really big repertoire, so we can keep the ball rolling.
Oh, can you even quantify that at this point? Like in the thousands by now.
Well, songs we've played live, I think it's probably like 300 or something like that. I mean, I'm not somebody. There's a They Might Be Giants Wikipedia that is like a fan run thing that is exhaustive and exhaustingly thorough. And there's probably a way to figure out how many songs we've performed live. But our we have a monitor guy who's sort of kept track of all the things we've done. But yeah, it's a pretty healthy number. I'm sure there are lots of bands that are veteran bands that are up there.
As a band with such a vast appreciation for kind of hooks, melodies, catchy tunes, I was curious, do you have much of an appreciation of pop music?
I'm obsessed with pop music. Um, you know, uh, there's I don't track the charts the way I once did, but when I hear a new song or even an old song that I was unaware of, it's really I can get really kind of obsessed with it, just like listen to some track over and over again. Um, what band I just discovered recently? I don't even know where they're from. I think they're from like Northern Europe somewhere. Do you remember the band? Nobody remembers this band. There's a song called Venus that was like "I'm Your Venus." Bananarama had a
Yeah,
hit with it like
yeah.
20 years later. But in the
Your
60s, when I was
desire.
yeah, exactly. When I was a little kid, that song was a huge hit. And the band that did it was called Shocking Blue. And they were essentially in the United States, they were just like a one-hit wonder, like they just had one song. But I've actually just recently kind of discovered the band Shocking Blue, and they're just a fantastic band. With there's a song that actually I found out later on Nirvana did a cover of it in their show. This song called Love Buzz. By Shocking Blue, and it's just a killer song. It's like a straight. Her voice is she's got such an unusual voice. Like she almost is singing in like a male register, and she's really an exciting singer. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that kind of comes up that really keeps me obsessed.
Yeah, I think. Are you in search of like writing timeless songs? Because everything in your repertoire seems to just, I don't know, it's got a eternal quality. You don't rely on emotions. You just have, I don't know, little self-contained stories and things.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty open ended. I think working on a track that is different than anything we've ever done before is always kind of exciting. Architecturally, it's interesting to write a song that has a lot of parts, but I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think it's more virtuous. I think if you can come up with a one riff song that actually holds people's interest, that's perfectly worthwhile too.
Yeah.
Oh, have you heard the song? There's this crazy song by an Italian singer from the 70s called Adrian Celentano, I think is his name. He wrote this. He was a pop star in the 70s in Italy, and he had this kind of, or I guess the late 60s. He had this uh, kind. I guess he sort of felt like the songs on the American charts, and I think he was referring to like R&B songs, had this kind of nonsense, and maybe even specifically like James
Yeah.
Brown songs, had this kind of nonsensical vibe to him. Like as an Italian, like he would hear these songs and they would just sort of wash over him as like a kind of gibberish. So he actually wrote this song. Uh,
Brazen Chan and
it,
Asinine Chuzo.
yes, yes, yes. You know the title.
Yeah.
I couldn't even pronounce it. I That track blows my mind. It's so cool
Oh,
because he's just singing. He's an Italian who does not speak English, and he's just singing his version of American gibberish. Like, and little
and he nails
Americanisms
it.
kind of jump out. Oh, it's a totally exciting song. The groove of that song is fantastic. The horn chart is great. He's great, and there's even a video of him on Italian TV with like 16 dancers in this kind of kaleidoscopic mirrored set that is one of the trippiest things I've ever seen. So yeah, Adriano Celentano, yeah, and then the album's called Adrian. As I can see it on my Spotify
I
here.
could find it. Yeah. In my memory, the story of it was that somebody said like the lyrics don't even matter anymore. People in Italy are just obsessed with everything American, and so when I'm gonna write
Right,
an
right,
American song, and then number
right. Well,
one on every chart.
it's a vibe, man. That track is a total vibe. It's so cool.
Nah, what a time capture, God. Hmm. So like, how do you know what's a good idea for a song, or is it in the execution of it?
Well, I mean, one thing that's sort of frustrating about being a songwriter for many years is
Everything.
you bump up against like your own limitations. Like there are lots of things I would like to be able to do, but they're just like not really like I mean, as we're discussing, like I was just in the past like couple of months, like a lot of other people, I've been like really obsessed with that "Not Like Us" song by Kendrick Lamar, and the and all even the BBL Drizzy song, which was kind of fascinating to me, and which is not available anywhere now. It's really odd. The original BBL Drizzy song, that the AI generated song that was the foundation of that,
Oh, it's
has
actually
been
AI.
it's AI, yeah. The original is AI. It's like the first. It's kind of a notable track because it's the first AI hit, really. Even though the hit was a remix version of it, but the source material that sounds like a record from the '70s was all done by AI. AI is really good at making proto disco funk. Like that's like of all the things, like you would think like that's what an ephemeral, elusive vibe to try to capture, you know, like 1974 funk music. That does not seem like a likely place for AI to thrive. But
Yeah.
that track is amazing. It's really got that kind of. It just sounds like it's from another time. But of course, it's from the vivid imagination of a robot. Um, but yeah, like a track like "Not Like Us," like the sounds on that track just blow my mind. I would love to be able to program sounds with like that progressively. And in my own little way, I've got a corner of it, but I just it's it's an elusive thing.
In terms of like capturing a sound as you're programming songs, or just the
It's
complexity that
everything.
you're after?
Uh, it's everything. I mean, I think we've come to appreciate how the value of a hooky melodic line. That really can kind of capture people's imaginations in a different way, and our audience definitely likes the hyper melodic things. But I'm 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 into all sorts of sonic things, and I'm just into experimentation in a way, to be perfectly honest.
I think that's so important for the longevity. My God, I don't know how you stick in a single vein.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think that's really kind of the only. You got to be ambitious about doing more than one kind of style, or it gets really small really fast.
Yeah. When was the last time you got to tour over to Australia?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I guess a couple years before the pandemic. we did a festival tour that was really fun. Groove in the Moo was who we
Yeah,
did.
the one.
Uh, we were we were opening for that band that everybody loves. I can't remember their name. They're a super big band now. Um, what were they called? They work with the same producer that did the Flaming Lips.
Oh, who are
Um,
also touring now, and I'm very excited for them.
they do a great show. They're really good.
Oh, you and them are
Um,
kind of like sister bands in terms of concepts and just the way you approach songwriting.
oh, I guess I mean their origins. I remember the Flaming Lips when they were didn't do they were almost like a noise rock band. Like, do you remember that they did a song called Jelly that was like a big
Yeah.
kind of alt rock hit. But they made uh, some pretty difficult albums. Like they were a hard listen at first. I mean, they've really become kind of a pop group in a way. But I love their whole output. And Do You Realize is, I mean, talk about a transcendent song. That's such a cool song.
And they try and escape that, I feel like. They're not even trying to write hit songs. They're just exploring whatever they're interested in.
I think they should stick to writing the hits.
That we'll leave that to you.
Yeah, we'll try.
Well, look forward to seeing you when
Well,
you
listen,
come to
I've got
Australia.
another radio thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on that.
Well, I'll see you 1st of October when you're here in Adelaide. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Adios.
See ya.